So the Viennese bass is changing tuning also for his romance, for example, is also changing tuning for other concerto. And the accompaniment is always written in the right key.
It was wonderful to connect with today's guest and learn more about what she's up to. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations. We are talking today with Isaline Leloup, who is a bassist and historical performance specialist, originally from Brussels, working on a project right now in the United Kingdom, and she has recently released an album of 18th century Viennese bass music. So we talk about that album, the inspiration behind it, what it was like to record it, and much more. Thank you to Cornel Lecomte, another past podcast guest, for connecting the two of us. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Ear Trumpet Labs, Upton Bass, and Dorico. More on them later. Definitely check out this album from Izalin, and let's get into this conversation. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you bet. And I know we have several mutual acquaintances. I know, I believe Cornel Lecomte is a friend and colleague and former teacher, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
That's great. How are things? Are you in Brussels?
No, actually, I'm in the UK. Oh. I'm in Brighton right now.
Oh, okay.
So it's right.
Okay, great. How are things in the UK right now? I was just talking to a friend in Leeds, and he was saying things are kind of opening up a bit. Travel's still a little bit weird outside of the UK, but how are things right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that, in fact. So traveling is a bit difficult. I mean, you have to fit to a lot of conditions, but still possible after quarantine. Mm-hmm. And here we are doing an opera that we will record and also make as a show on the 11th. So things are going on slowly, but for sure.
Okay.
So concert should come back soon.
It's great to hear. So concerts are coming back. That's wonderful. That's got to be a relief.
So
have you played many concerts in 2021? Have there been some concerts so far, or is it just starting to pick up now?
No, I was a bit lucky. I did play some, let's say one per month for all year. So it's not a lot. But I had the opportunity to come also to play some recording with great ensemble. So, I mean, the year was a lot about the recording that I did and to keep contact and making auditions, stuff like this.
Well, the recording sounds fabulous.
Went quite well.
That's what bravo on the recording. I was listening through, and it sounds fantastic. And where did you record it? Just out of curiosity, you probably have it listed somewhere. But was it where was it? A recording studio or a church or a hall or?
It was a recording studio. Because we did it in Brussels, and we had the opportunity to have a very nice room in studio to record it. So we were thinking it would be the best option because of also noises, outside noises. And I didn't want it to do this recording in a church for the simple reason that it's classical music, and I wanted to avoid as much as possible too many delay between the instruments to keep something really clear and when you can hear everything between the voices. So we chose to do studio recording, which was really nice.
Well, but they did a wonderful job, or you all did an excellent job, because it has a wonderful acoustic, but there's real clarity to it too. So I was curious, because that can be a challenge if you're recording in a live space, you know. So it doesn't sound like it was recorded in a dry space at all, but you've got wonderful clarity.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really the topic that I wanted to keep as not necessary as period instrument recording, but I wanted to have as much as possible the color of each instrument sounding. Mm-hmm. So that was really my purpose. And I think the sound engineer did a really great job for that.
Now, have you been thinking about doing this recording before the pandemic hit, or has this been like a big pandemic project for you, or how did that all work?
Well, let's say that it was a project that I thought about 2 years ago already, like to do something around quartet instrument in Viennese tuning, but nothing was really set up before the pandemic. Let's say that the pandemic just gave me the opportunity to put myself on it, like do the arrangement of the pieces, look for the people, also look for the subsidies, because we get subsidies from Belgium states to do the recording. So, well, let's say that it gave me the opportunity to put myself on it. Which I would have done it anyway, but maybe a bit later.
Of course, yeah. What a good opportunity to seize the moment when you can't be playing as much, and that's
exactly
wonderful. And what cool piece! I love. I don't know the Hofmeister or the Sperger as well. I know the Dittersdorf, the viola and violin or bass. You know that is I love that duo, and you sound great on all of them. Had you thought about some other pieces, or how did you decide on those pieces to record?
Actually, my first piece was the Hofmeister quartet. There was the principal idea of the recording, and coming with that, the idea of record a music that was possible to transport, as we did before, like into a house easily. So point is what's not using a big orchestra or not using a piano. And so after came up the idea of doing this Sperger concerto, the 18th. So I tried to use this quartet formula. So to make an arrangement would take all the good stuff of the orchestral arrangement to a quartet. And and then we were like searching pieces also because of the pitch of the instrument. And I find the duet of Dittersdorf really interesting to record, because honestly, I love this piece. I wanted to do a good recording of it. I wanted to do also some research about the manuscript, because we changed some notes compared to the edition we had. We really stay stuck to the manuscript. So, well, it was part of the process, let's say.
Interesting. Okay, I've never looked at the manuscript for that. So there are some differences between what people typically do and what you ended up doing from the manuscript?
Well, let's say that there's differences between the manuscript and the edition we had. So we try to understand why, and we make choices, for my sense, that are more close to the manuscript. Terms of some alteration were missing in the edition. In some parts of the duet. And so, I mean, I made a lot of research on it, and that I end up to think that the manuscript version, and to stay as close as possible as the way it was written, would be the best option. And I wanted to give it a try. And what we think after all of this with the violist who was playing the solo in this duet is that we are quite happy about the change we made, and about coming back to this manuscript. And also we did record with the bass tuned in E flat to give a more shining sound, more open string tuning. So it was the research we made of it.
Very cool. I was curious about the tuning. So you're in E flat for the Dittersdorf. What was your tuning for the Hofmeister and for the Sperger? I know there's Sperger. I know that especially Sperger uses a lot of different tunings. For the Hofmeister is D major tuning, obviously. For the Sperger, I also recorded in let's say E flat tuning, because this concerto is a concerto written like this. The sonata, Sperger wrote a sonata for cello and bass, which is exactly the two movements are more developed in the concerto. But this concerto is written half tone higher. It's a C minor concerto. And so, in fact, I just tuned the bass higher and read in the Hammond clef. Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But the quartet accompanying is well in C minor. They don't transpose the instrument. It's just the bass was transposed half tone.
Wow.
So, and it makes a sound it makes a color really different for the instrument. So, yeah, I mean, in Sperger pieces, he did several change of clef. Generally, it's the bass who is changing tuning. So the Viennese bass is changing tuning. Also, for his Romance, for example, is also changing tuning for other concerto. And the accompaniment is always written in the right key.
This episode is brought to you by Ear Trumpet Labs. They make hand-built mics out of Portland, Oregon, and they have an excellent mic for upright bass called Nadine. The Nadine is a condenser mic with a clear, natural sound and incredible feedback rejection. This mic is a completely new design. The head mounts in between the strings above the tailpiece with a rubber grommet, and the body securely straps to the tailpiece with Velcro elastic. A 14-inch Mogami cable connects the two parts, making it easy to place on any bass. It's durable and holds up to the demanding needs of the instrument while offering excellent sound quality. Ear Trumpet Labs is offering a free t-shirt just for Contrabass Conversations listeners with the purchase of a mic. Just visit www.eartrumpetlabs.com/contrabass to claim yours and check out the Nadine. Upton Bass is at a fascinating transition from selling accessories online, kind of in the early days, to selling other people's basses, to starting to make their own basses, which they now do and make over 120 a year. Here are Eric and Gary of Upton Bass on that transition.
So then we stopped getting containers of instruments.
Right, yeah.
Which was
a lot of dough all at once. So it was taxing, and the quality was going down with every shipment, you know. And at that point, we were doing so much ourselves anyways, final assembly, varnish, setup. It was kind of a no-brainer to start making them in-house.
Whatever your playing needs are, Upton Bass will find you an instrument that works with your budget and that you will love for the long term. They have an amazing, loyal fan base that has bought, several people have bought 2, 3, even 4 Upton basses over the years. They stand behind their products. They're beautiful instruments made in the Northeast in the United States. UptonBass.com, and thanks so much for sponsoring the podcast. Really cool. Well, pardon me.
Sorry, I just wanted to say it's the same for Dittesdorf.
Well, okay, right. So you're reading like in D major, and then or the violist rather is reading, and then you're transposing. Is that what's happening, or?
So from the manuscript, the parts are all in E flat. So I actually write transposition parts to be able to read in D major and to play in E flat.
Okay.
I did write I did it to write the part myself. Okay. But it's the principle. Yeah.
Well, they all sound fabulous. Bravo on the album, and that's something that maybe you would have done at some point down the road, but it's good to take that opportunity, when you can't play
exactly
and really do it. How did you get into Viennese bass? It's such a cool instrument and such a cool period of history for the instrument too, that I think a lot of people, particularly people like with my background, I just have a traditional, classical orchestral background. How'd you get into this Viennese bass world?
Actually, it was quite very strangely. So I did study modern bass. I played it for 10 years before doing Viennese tuning. Then one day I put myself into a bit of historical performances, and I met a bass player called Corneille Lecomte in Brussels. And I was studying orchestra concerto with him, and he's really he really loves Viennese tuning himself. And one day he just told me, "But why did you not learn final concerto on Viennese tuning to understand the images of the composers and the sound of the original instrument?" And it's just I end up to play Viennese tuning because of him, in fact. And it's really, for me, it was like an evidence to continue with this tuning, because I find it, I was never into the classical repertoire before, and it was the first time this repertoire just makes sense to me. because the change of instrument. So, and then I of course study Viennese tuning in Basel at the Schola Cantorum with David Sinclair, and then I continue to studying with other person. But it was in fact a modern teacher who gave me this input at the first time.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Cornell, I've loved getting to know him, and what a fascinating person, and so passionate about Viennese bass, or just that And I love his book that he put together. I believe Meta Hodos is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite looks at. I've recommended it a whole bunch of times this past year or whatever since I got to know it, because it's a great look inside that world, but it's not necessarily super academic. So I think it's very accessible for people who maybe have a modern bass background.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, always is like a modern player looking to the old past and catching this tuning and searching about all the explanation about the difference in manuscript. And we work quite a lot together to really understand music more and to go further into the Viennese tuning. I mean, searching all the time for different position, because you have a lot quantities of possibilities that the instrument offers you. And I think the Meta Hodos he writes is really a good start to understand the tuning. And then you need to do a lot of research yourself, and to understand how to make the best of your instrument. And the point is also to be able to change character and to change fingerings to give that with the instrument. So not always keeping the fingerings as it comes, but maybe go a bit or like only on one string or passing string with the same passage to make it sounds differently. And it's what is fabulous with Viennese tuning is that you can do that all the time.
Yeah, it's like I think I have this line, I think I got it from Cornell talking about this, but it's like the more research you do, the less sure you necessarily are about anything. I mean, maybe when you start, you think, oh, there's one way that people did, approach tuning or approach, but then the more research you do and the deeper you get into it, the less sure, there's just like infinite research you can do into what these composers must have been like, how they play, how tunings and such. It's endlessly fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it's also really nice because we did get some manuscript coming from these composers and also some stuff like cadenza already written by hand, and so we can understand more what is this composer or player was about to do, what is the other was about to do, and it gave us like really some ideas that as a modern player, as starting with modern tuning, modern bass, we would maybe not think about. That's also that it's like a bit forgetting what we learn as modern player, what kind of fingerings, what kind of setup we use, and then rediscover an instrument. So with, for me also a lot coming from the gambas thinking. So the thinking of playing by chord, of playing in position, or make it sound like resonant and round, and that we lost with the modern bass. So it's what also gives this tuning so interesting and so shiny about sound. And resonance, and it's also really that specific that specific stuff that I wanted to keep in the recording. That it was possible for the person who listened to it to hear this resonance the tuning gave at the instrument, and to not lose harmonics, let's say.
Well, and
for me was really important.
Yeah, no, they ring out beautifully. What I've listened to, the harmonics, and when you get into that, again, coming from a modern player perspective, when you go into the world of gut strings, it's like an ocean of sound. There's a wonderful period instrument player here in the States named John Feeney. He's in New York City, and he did for the handles. I forget. He did a video a few years ago describing what it's like to play on gut strings, and he was kind of comparing it to analog recordings versus digital recordings with modern strings, and that stuck with me. And there's such an interesting palette that you get as soon as you start to get into into the whole gut string world, I guess, and the Viennese tuning world.
Exactly, and also with different gut setup, you also can give a different sound. It's for example, the setup I use on the Viennese bass to play solo, to record the CD, is completely another setup of string. Another type of string, type of torsion that I would play in orchestra. To give different, because we search for different kind of approaching the sound. In orchestra, you want a sound which really like sharp and who can give a lot of energy to the other player. More often in a song who can pass through all the people, which in the recording you search sometimes for something more floaty and more shining. So you will not use the same top string as you would do as a modern player. It's just like here you can really contact the person who made the string and say, I would like this and this and this. Could you give it to me?
Wow.
And it makes your possibilities more bigger than everything.
Yeah. Wow, interesting. Let's forget that the pandemic happened. If we go back to like 2019 or something, like what does a typical year, or what was a typical year looking like for you? Were you staying mostly in Brussels or touring Europe or playing on like just what sort of activities? And now it's great to hear that you're back performing in the UK right now. But it's like, what did your life look like on the instrument before March 2020?
Well. Before March 2020, I can say my life was, I always say I had no personal life. I was always switching instruments, sometimes, most of the time, let's say Viennese and solo stuff, but also orchestral in accompanying in opera, still a bit with modern, also with the violone. So basically I was each week on a different project. And I have to say, most of the time, not really in Belgium. A bit. That's what of the good stuff of the pandemic. It gave me more contact into my country. But I was more used to go to play in France, in the Netherlands, or in Switzerland, where I studied for 2 years.
Okay.
So, but I would say it was really a great life, and the pandemic gave me the opportunity also to make more Belgium input now that I live in Brussels, and to be able also to discover the music in my place. Otherwise, you are all the time going from one concert to another, and finally, you don't really take time to discover different person next to you. So let's say that it gives the opportunity to create more and more music close to you.
People have been saying such great things about my course with Discover Double Bass Beginners Classical Bass. Here is Nicholas Walker, professor of double bass at Ithaca College and past president of the International Society of Bassists. Nicholas writes, Jason draws from this vast network with his contagious enthusiasm and love of learning. Presented through the beautifully organized and easily accessible framework of Discover Double Bass, this is a terrific learning experience for any beginner, as well as a great model for any new teacher. I am blushing, Nicholas. Thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled with how this course came out. Jeff Chalmers and the whole team at Discover Double Bass are so professional. It was such a great experience, and it was the best representation of what I would love to take every single beginner through in terms of format and presentation. And I'm just so happy that it's out there. You can learn more. We've got a link in the show notes, or you can just visit discoverdouble.com/Jason Heath. This episode is brought to you by Dorico. And one of the things that struck me about Dorico when I first opened it up was this innovative user interface design. There are 5 different modes. There is setup, write, engrave, play, and print mode. And here is Senior Product Manager Daniel Spreadbury on why they set it up like this.
As they are presented to you on the screen, they're kind of there in a strip at the top left-hand corner of the screen, and they're very prominent. You can whack them with your mouse, or if you're using a Surface, you can tap them with your finger, and that basically then changes the whole UI of the program.
It is such an innovative design. It makes working for me so much cleaner in music notation software. I have become such a fan. I use this piece of software every single day. Check them out at Dorico.com. That'll take you to their page on Steinberg's website. And there's a free version, Dorico SE, that'll let you do practically everything the program does with up to 2 parts. So that's perfect if you're working with a student or making exercises or that kind of thing. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Dorico. Yeah, it's been interesting talking to musicians this past year and a half who are mostly not at home touring. I was just at a music festival last week with somebody that plays in a trio, a modern trio, but they're never home. You know, they're always touring, and so the last year and a half they've always been home. And and now as things start to open up, and it's great. I played my first concert last week, and it was so nice to land, get off the plane, and I'm playing with other bass players immediately, and I thought, like, wow, I sure missed this. But it's interesting. Do you anticipate do you see yourself going back to a sort of schedule like you had in 2019, let's say, or have you been thinking about that at all?
Well, I don't know, actually. A part of myself really want to do this life again, of going on tour, meeting people, playing in orchestra, because it's what make me be myself, let's say. I love going on tour, and I'm not afraid, I'm not tired to travel, to play. So just another part of myself would say I need to get used to it again. And it was very nice to be at home sometimes, and to be able to do this recording, for example, to be able to think more about what you really want to do as a project. Because when you are on tour all the time, you don't really create your own project. I mean, it's more difficult because you have less time, simply. So I have no idea if I want to go back completely to this old life again. And even I know that I will probably do without noticing it.
Yeah.
So if it's possible, it would be, of course, it would be great.
It's an interesting thing to think about. I've talked about this with lots of musicians on the podcast before, because I definitely think I am really enjoying getting back to being on the road. Like, I think for me personally, there's definitely too much time at home, and I've had way too much time at home. I've been slowly losing my mind in San Francisco. But I also think, and for me, the road inspires me. Being on tour, it energizes me, and it gives me energy for other projects. But I do think there's a level for me, and I know that's true for other musicians, where it's like too much time on the road. You know, I've talked to people who were playing 250 concerts a year, you know, or more, and it's like you were saying, it can be tough to create things, or to like certainly do a recording project of your own when you're just going. But so it's a tricky mix, I think.
Yeah, exactly, and it's. We feel, of course, we choose this job because we are so passionate about going on tour and playing and doing a lot of stuff. I've never enough of doing music, of researching, of looking into scores, to just like have project to play again. And the pandemic didn't make me lose that. Even I was stuck at home, and it was not easy all the time. But I really wish that we could go back to this life again, and in the same time not forget that maybe we should rest. I mean, and not accept like 2 concerts on a day or 2 different production in the same time, but maybe just like choose something more efficient and better for ourselves. So that's what I would try to do after the pandemics, if it's possible.
Yeah, it's the plight of the musician is we want to be involved in everything, but at a certain point it can rob us of the energy to do the most important things. And it's I think a lot of people, this giant reset and sitting at home, and just as the opportunities start to come back on board, you know, it'll be interesting to see what you do, what I do, what other people do. As at least here in the United States, we've not been good at handling the pandemic, but we've at least been good at getting vaccinations out. And I know the UK is the same. So things are starting to look, at least here in this country, a lot closer to pre-pandemic. And so concerts are back and people are out, and it's great. And I'm certainly enjoying that. But in the back of my mind, I am thinking about trying to maybe have a little more balance so that I can,
exactly,
be home a little more.
And yeah. And I mean, I think it's maybe the opportunity to take this balance more. Also because I don't know if it was the same for you, but I also start to teach because of the pandemics. So it's also developing another part of life, let's say, that it's also important, and that it give maybe more stability in the time passing at home without forgetting touring. So, I mean, I would really interesting to see in 6 months what will going to happen, actually.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
We don't know.
Right.
And it's very exciting, I think, also. Like, maybe at least thinking of not having a video concert again, and try to pass the summer through and have new stuff in September who will stay open and active. So
I'm curious. There's this Dutch double bass festival. James Oessie organizes it in Rotterdam, I believe, and it's in October. And I have it on the calendar. And because I'm really looking, but I'm not sure if I'll go because who knows what restrictions are like. And I do not want to go quarantine for 2 weeks or that sort of thing. But I'm really looking forward to.
I don't suggest it.
Yeah, right.
No, I can't say that because I was in quarantine for this project in the UK, and I can tell you it's not fun at all. Even the quarantine was really nice, and I ended up with to do it in a very nice place. But the project or the festival or everything should really be nice to do that. Or you have to take some vacation after in the Netherlands.
Yeah. For sure. Well, we'll see. I love that you started teaching during this time. Are you teaching, or have you been teaching modern bass, or have you been teaching period performance, or like what sort of teaching have you been doing? I'm curious.
Well, I'm teaching modern bass officially, and I have also in school. But I also teach period instruments, but for private students. So that's more difficult to find, let's say, in Belgium, because the bass is really popular for jazz and for classical students who go to the academy and then study quartets. Want to play in quartet, in quintet, double bass. It's fantastic. And so that's my official bass teaching, and I start also to do this Baroque bass input and also some violone classes, and I find it also really great. It's just private students for the moment.
Yeah. Wow. Is it strange? I think I'm just curious because you since you still do some modern bass, or you had been, is it weird to go back to modern bass when after playing, you know, this recording and all these tunings and playing on gut strings, everything we've talking about? Is it strange to go between those two worlds from time to time, or is it just like riding a bicycle? You just right back in it.
Well. Maybe not as the bicycle, but no, it was really strange at the beginning, and I think it gets better when I could make really clear in my head what I wanted to do as a person, as a musician, what I wanted to give, also musically. I mean, because for me this is the clue. If I stay honest with myself, with what musically I like and what I want, I can also teach it on modern students, because I want to stay honest. And so it takes me a time to pass through this idea to know I need now to do only period instruments, because sometimes it's just not possible. And I think really it's getting better with the time, and the clue was to stay honest with yourself and to be able to do both of them without all the time being like frustrating because you cannot do this or this. But it's not easy. Let's say it takes also time. If you switch from time to time, it's more difficult to get used to it. It's like switching, for example, with violone and Viennese bass, because it's two different tuning. So it asks you also a lot of flexibility, and I think that's the clue, to be flexible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's a bass player named Dean Farrell. I don't know if you're familiar with Dean. He's quite a character. He's in the period performance world in some capacity. He was the principal bass of the Reykjavik Symphony in Iceland, and he's always doing so he plays on gut strings. He's notorious for doing alternate tunings and all kind like in the same piece. And I remember talking to him about playing jazz gigs, and he would tune everything up a half step, and people would come up and think, "What are you doing?" Because they'd be hearing a B flat blues, and he'd be playing open strings.
Sure.
And but that flexibility is just so interesting to me. I mean, I'm the sort of person who gets confused if I go between solo strings and orchestral strings. So I haven't done a lot in that world, but it's got to be interesting going from like, that Sperger or this sort of soloistic playing, and then going back to a modern setting. I could see how it would take a little bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, it gets time to be flexible, actually. Like the first time I switched tuning, it was just to put a low D on my modern setup, and it was already really disturbing. But I mean, after the third change of tuning, you get more used to it, I would say, because you need to keep running. And what I did, which really helps, was stopping to play modern bass as much as possible for 2 years. The 2 years I was in Basel, I practically only play Viennese tuning, just because I wanted to be able to be sure of what I would do, to be sure about the fingerings I would use, and to get some inside habit. So know that if you ask me to play a score in Viennese tuning in orchestra, I could sight reading, and I would play Viennese without asking myself question. But it asked me to really put the modern bass on the side for a moment, or let's say the normal tuning, because it was also with gut string, but to put this tuning in fourth on the side to be able to start again with a new instrument. And that was really interesting to do, and I'm really happy to have taken the time, because of course I will never forget the normal fourth tuning that I used for some years. I will not count now, but that I will never forget. But be able to really read in another tuning without asking yourself question, that asked me to only do this tuning for a moment, let's say.
Mm-hmm. You're making me want to experiment with other tunings. It's really exciting. It's almost like learning another language in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. And really at the beginning, it's really, you are of course able to play your concerto because you're working on it. But the point is like be able to use the tuning for other stuff than solo. And that takes time. Like really, it's interesting to do. And then after you could be really proud, let's say, because for me, Viennese tuning was also the point to be able to use this tuning in orchestra, to play Haydn Symphony, Mozart Symphony, to play the solo of Haydn in the symphony with the tuning. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense if you do only Viennese tuning to play concerto.
Yeah.
I mean, it does a lot of sense, but I think that if you want to truly understand it, you also need to play the orchestra stuff. So that's why I did really just the tuning for a period to be able to do that after as a professional musician.
Mm-hmm. Well, you sound fabulous. I do you have, this putting together an album is a massive project. Have you got any ideas for the next album? Maybe you just want to take a break and not think about recordings for a while, but have you got any ideas? I think sometimes people, they go through that process and they realize they're starting to hatch the idea for the next project.
Yeah, I have two ideas actually. One is not necessary for the album, but I would like to continue to arrange a concerto for quartet. Bass plus quartet. So that I would find really nice, and because I want to bring the music as more close as possible to the people. So that is one of my ideas now. And I would love to record Per questa bella mano with singers.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Or soon or not soon, I don't know, but this is one of the pieces I would love to do. And for the rest, we will see.
Well, I can't wait to check out what's next for you. If your travels take you to the U.S. or out here to San Francisco, we've got a great period music scene here. Let me know. I'll certainly let you know when I'm.
With pleasure.
Yeah. I'll make sure to link up to your album. I have the link on Spotify. I can send them there. You've got your Facebook page, your YouTube. Anywhere else you want to send people?
Maybe for the person who use Apple, it's also an Apple store. So
okay. Yep, absolutely.
That would be nice to do. Well, for the rest, I think you're doing great. It would be great that people have it like that.
Okay, cool. I'll make sure to. I'm an Apple user myself, so I'll make sure to put that link too. And I am notorious for mispronouncing people's names with my bad American accent. So just while I have the recorder going, can you just pronounce your name so I can listen back and try it a few times?
Okay, it's Isaline Leloup.
Okay, there's a 50% chance I would have gotten that right, but I've learned through hard experience. Even if I think I know, get it on recording. So appreciate that. Is there anything else?
Welcome.
You want to get out there? I appreciate. It's great to chat with you, and it's fun to connect on the other side of the world like this. But anything else you want to put out on the podcast or?
We are now preparing edition of the arrangement of the pieces of the Sperger concerto. I will edit the arrangement, and I'm also planning a re-edition of the duet of Tito Stock. So for any bass player interested, would be there soon.
Cool. And let me know when those come out, and I can we have a good email newsletter with a good following, and I'll put this out as a podcast, but anything when those get done, let me know, and I'll be sure to link up to those to send people to them.
I would be really happy. I mean, it was already really nice to talk about the CD with you and to have this chat. So really I'm happy to share this with you after.
Isaline, thank you so much for chatting with me. Folks, we've got the album linked up. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your music. Check it out. Boy, she has a fantastic sound on that album, and just really what a talent. And yeah, thank you so much. I love exploring all of these different experiences that people have in the music world. It's the thing I had hoped to do with this podcast when I started back in 2007. Oh, I can't even say that. So long ago. If you go back, and actually don't do this, I will just summarize for you, but if you go back and listen to the very first episode I ever did for this podcast, which by the way has this Apple Loops electric bass loop, even though it's about double bass, which is kind of hilarious. I have this quote unquote mission statement that really ends up being what I did with this podcast. I hope I would get to connect with people and learn more about the world and learn more about people's experiences beyond my little Chicago bubble at the time. And now I've done much more. And that's kind of what's happened. So it's a lot of fun. It is work, but it is time well spent. It's one of those good habits. If you've listened to the podcast before, you've heard me talk about this probably endlessly. But to me, it's like working out or eating healthy or reading a good book or something like that. I love sitting down and turning off all the devices and just just chatting with somebody that, and when it's somebody that I don't know, that's even can be, well, they're all fun in their own way. I love reconnecting with people that I have an existing relationship with. I love meeting new people through the podcast. That's been a wonderful thing for me. I tend to just sort of get stuck in my ways and just hang out and do the same things. I think that's a pretty normal human thing. But this podcast has been a lot of fun for me to do. I can't believe that we're into the 800s with these episodes, and we'll just see where it goes. Seem to keep doing it. I took a bunch of years off, but I guess I'm still doing it, and I wouldn't be doing it without the team that helps me put these together. Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Mitch Mooring, and Trevor Jones. Mitch makes beautiful basses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Learn more at mitchmooring.com. Boy, is it weird to hear my voice not through headphones with my broken audio interface. I used to do this way back in the day when I didn't have gear. Now I have gear, but it's all broken, so I'm just talking to myself, hoping this records, and thanking you for listening, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.